I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel's military court announces sentencing on an incredibly controversial case. Muslim worshippers return in droves to the Temple Mount, and you may want to renew your subscription to Amazon because an award-winning show is spending its 4th season in the Holy Land. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. This has been one of the most divisive court cases here in Israel in quite a while. A military appeals court just upheld the manslaughter ruling on Elor Azaria, the IDF soldier, who was convicted of shooting and killing an incapacitated Palestinian teen in the West Bank city of Hebron. The courts have now rejected Azaria's appeal, declaring that he will serve his full 18 months in prison. The case made global headlines when video footage of the killing went viral. Azaria was originally sentenced to 18 months in prison earlier this year on charges of manslaughter for killing 17-year-old Palestinian Abdel Fattah al-Sharif. But the video evidence filmed in secret by the Palestinian human rights organization B'Tselem is still fresh in the mind of Israelis and Palestinians, especially today. Back in March, Azaria's lawyers were successful in getting the minimum 18-month sentence from the military court. Today, Azaria was hoping the military appeals court would take his side and dismiss the charges altogether, but it looks like the charges will stick. This has been a controversial case, with Israelis and Knesset members on the left saying the charges don't come close to atoning for the killing like this, and those on the right, including Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, calling for President Reuven Rivlin to grant Azaria a full pardon for the soldier they believe is a hero.
באנו לכאן היום בראש ובראשונה לתמוך בלוחם כפיר שעומד כאן לדין בבניין הסמוך ובמשפחתו, ולהבהיר קבל עם ועדה שאנחנו לא נרפה עד שהלוחם המצטיין יחזור הביתה. אנחנו הכנו כאן עצרת גדולה, יעלו אישי ציבור ידברו, בין השאר גם חבריו של אלאור, שיקבלו מאיתנו צל"ש בשם עם ישראל, אותו נעניק סימולטנית בו זמנית לאלאור שנמצא באולם הדיונים, ובו אנו מודים לו על המסירות שלו.
This is a verdict that's going to be polarizing for everyone, and one that sets a serious precedent for future military cases like this one. Now joining me in the studio now are Knesset members Amir Ohana of the Likud Party and Tamar Zandberg of Meretz to help us discuss the Elor Azaria case a little bit further. Now I'm just going to open this up. In your opinions, has the military appeals court made the right decision? Tamar, I'll start with you.
Well, I think it's not our place to rule the legal and justice issues that has been very clearly declared by the court. This issue has become political, and I think what you hear now, after the verdict was clearly cut, and after the really harsh sayings by the judges, saying very clearly that this has been a violation of law. We hear many politicians go out and say, Elor Azaria is not a criminal, he's a hero, he shouldn't be sentenced, and if he was sentenced, he should be released by the president or the military chief of staff. I think this is irresponsible. I think this case went out of proportion totally in the last...
Is there any other case that is like this? Any other case that comes close? It doesn't. I don't believe there is.
Well, we had several cases throughout the years of the state of Israel, like the 300 Parashat Kav 300, the 300 line when the Shin Bet officials actually killed the terrorists, not in the scene, but remotely from that, and they were pardoned. So I think this is why many Israelis don't understand the gap between, on the one hand, and this is something that our viewers should know, it was not just an innocent bystander that was shot. It was a terrorist that up until a few minutes before he was shot was stabbing and trying to killing Elor's friends. So why should he go to prison for such a long time? Now, indeed, the Supreme Court of the Appeals of the IDF accepted the fact that although it was a very serious charge of manslaughter, he didn't go for more than 18 months, which is a very light punishment comparing to the size of the magnitude of the charges.
Well, it kind of, well, that brings to me...
It's perfectly fine for the courts to do their job. We don't criticize that. But this is a case that has a tremendous amount of effect to Israel. So I think it will be good for the Chief of Staff to pardon Elor Azaria at least partially and send him back home to his family.
I think your comments just now bring up an important question, is that, you know, if he was given such a light sentence for, you know, what is essentially murder,
it's not murder, it's manslaughter.
Yeah. Manslaughter, correct. For manslaughter, to get 18 months prison, could the argument be made that maybe they didn't want to give him such a hard sentence, but they had to because he was guilty in the eyes of the public long before the sentence even occurred?
I think politics penetrated into the court in this case. And I think it's very dangerous. I think we should all refrain from that. Mm-hmm. And I think that the sentence was, the verdict was very, very clear. The justice, the court said very sharply and very clearly that Elor Azaria is criminal. He shot against the law and against the IDF commands, and he should be punished, period. Now, making him a hero and turning this into a political question of how we should keep our security, how we should treat terrorism, this is not the case. This is not the right case. And I feel sorry for all of us that the Israeli society should be torn between right and left on an issue of clear rule of law.
But the fact is that it's not very clear.
It is clear. Israel does not, we don't have
18 months for manslaughter?
A sentence. We don't have that, and of course with no trial. And we cannot allow for people, civilians or soldiers, go out in wherever a terror is hitting or they see a terror attack and behave against the law and against IDF commands. This should not be...
I wish to oppose. I think on the contrary, the fact that the court was indeed very clear indicting and charging Elor with manslaughter, but gave him 18 months, is a message that it is unclear. It is unclear.
How can it be unclear?
Because it's 18 months, it's a very light sentence, which means the court understands that there is a gap between...
There is no sign for what you say in the verdict. We read it together.
It's the numbers.
We set hours in the studio.
This is the gap.
Yes, but
I think that the questions, unfortunately, that this leaves us is kind of the answer in and of itself, that this is this totally divisive situation where we won't really ever know just how the courts really felt about this, you know, whether they enjoyed giving him 18 months or wanted to give him more or less.
The verdict was very clear. We heard it. Right. It is a light sentence. I don't know. I believe that it is because the court is part of everything that is happening, you know, outside the court, and this is penetrating to the minds and hearts of the justice sitting in rule. But nevertheless, the verdict is very, very clear. I think we have to read it and see that this is a case when there is no questions about what happened, and that should lead to a punishment. Otherwise, the connection between a wrongdoing and a punishment, once you detach it, you send a very wrong message, not only to that soldier in line, but to all of us.
Any other cases of manslaughter would have ended with a two-figure numbers of prison time.
I think on that note, I apologize profusely. Unfortunately, we must move on. Moving on. Thank you so much for both coming in again.
Thank you.
A 22-year-old suspect has just been shot and killed by Israeli police in Jaffa over the weekend. The police are saying the suspect returned gunfire with his own weapon while attempting to flee the scene of a shooting at the Jaffa port. But Jaffa residents are seeing this as more of the same police aggression they've been feeling against the Arab minority for a long time. Hundreds took to the streets yesterday, joining the funeral procession for the deceased suspect, and things quickly erupted into open protest against the Israeli police. An Israeli journalist was beaten and his camera was destroyed while covering the riots, which left Jaffa's main road with tire fires, stones, and violence. Joint Arab List Knesset member Hanin Zawabi is accusing the police of executing the man, quote, in cold blood. And her fellow Joint List Knesset member Dov Hanin has demanded the Israeli Attorney General open an investigation into the incident. The police officer who opened fire on the suspect claims he did so after he refused to stop fleeing and that the officer had been aiming for the tires of the victim's moped. But a lawyer for the victim's family is saying the police used deadly force for no reason at all, since the suspect was, quote, no danger to their lives, end quote. Now that Israel has removed all its security measures on the Temple Mount, Muslim prayer has resumed at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Nearly 10,000 worshippers gathered in Jerusalem on Friday, the climax of some of the most violent clashes between Israel and Palestinians in years. Israel had taken down most of the security measures a few days prior, but still the streets of Jerusalem were on fire with riots and boycotts and the Palestinians demanding that Israel return every last thing to the status quo. Israeli officials agreed to lift their final age restrictions to Palestinian access to the Old City on Friday morning, and shortly after that, the Jordanian Waqf declared the Temple Mount officially back open for prayer. The end of the boycott saw huge numbers of worshippers flooding the streets of the Old City. Tensions are still high at the holy site despite the fact that prayers have resumed too. There were clashes between Palestinians and Israeli forces throughout the weekend, and Israel has stated that it will continue to monitor the situation. Palestinians from all factions are celebrating what was, for them, one of their biggest victories in quite a while. After nearly 2 weeks of protests and boycotts at the Temple Mount, Israel tore down the last of its controversial security measures, the metal detectors, the cameras, and the guardrails, before Muslim prayer reopened at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israel put up the security after 3 teenage Palestinians murdered 2 Israeli police at the Temple Mount with guns they had smuggled into the holy site. Israel saw this as a monstrous terror attack, but the Palestinian world saw Israel's response as a direct challenge to their control over the Temple Mount. For them, it had nothing to do with security. It was all about sovereignty. And as soon as the metal detectors went up, the riots began. The Jordanian Waqf called for protests and boycotts outside the gates of the holy site until the status quo was restored, and both Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas leaders called for days of rage at the Temple Mount. The Israeli response was also divided. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman attacked 2 Knesset members, Culture Minister Miri Regev and Coalition Chairman David Bitan, when they publicly criticized Shin Bet agents who wanted to remove the detectors. But now, Palestinians are celebrating their demonstration of grassroots power, and Palestinian leaders are hoping to keep the momentum going. King Abdullah II of Jordan praised the win, claiming they had prevented the Judaization of the Temple Mount. In continued protests outside Attorney General Avichai Mandelblatt's home, hundreds of Israelis demonstrated last night in Petach Tikva against Mandelblatt's handling of the criminal cases surrounding Prime Minister Netanyahu. Demonstrators are angry at the Attorney General's alleged delaying tactics in any one of the 4 cases implicating the Netanyahu family. One case, dubbed Case 1000, calls out the Prime Minister and his wife for graft in accepting hundreds of thousands of shekels worth of gifts like cigars and champagne from wealthy friends and benefactors. Case 2000 alleges that Netanyahu tried to trade hurting a business rival in exchange for good press from Yediot Achronot publisher Arnon Moses. No such deal was ever put into effect, but clips of recordings of the Prime Minister and Moses' dealings were released. In Case 3000, Netanyahu's personal attorney David Shimron and several others stand accused of bribery and corruption in the acquisition of $1.5 billion defense contract for German submarines. Netanyahu is not directly linked as a suspect in that case, but has been requested for testimony. Finally, in Case 4000, Netanyahu is accused of making decisions in favor of Israeli telephone and communications company Bezeq, while failing to disclose conflicting ties to Bezeq head Shaul Elovitz. Netanyahu and his family have denied any involvement or knowledge of wrongdoing, but one thing is for sure: the people are getting restless to find out the truth. Officials from the Palestinian Authority are saying that the PA will gradually resume coordinating security with Israel as long as Israel doesn't touch Muslim sovereignty on the Temple Mount. President Abbas froze all security cooperation after Israel installed metal detectors on the Temple Mount earlier this month. But now that prayer has reopened at the holy site, both sides are hoping to get back to normal. Relations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority have been stuck in neutral for years. The only cooperation between the 2 neighbors has been a long-standing history of collaboration on security. This has been critical to both parties. For Israel, it means securing borders with its neighbor, and for President Abbas's Fatah party, it means containing Hamas violence in the West Bank. And now, after everything that's happened at the Temple Mount, Palestinian Authority officials have recognized Israel's effort to calm things down at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and are promising to slowly return to security collaborations, assuming Israel doesn't do anything further to limit Muslim prayer at the holy site. This crisis has been one of the bloodiest in a long time between Israel and the Palestinians, so some cooperation would certainly be a welcomed step away from the alternative of more violence. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has had some major health problems over the last few years, but now his doctors are saying he has a clean bill of health following some routine checkups at a hospital in Ramallah. 82-year-old Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was admitted to a Ramallah hospital yesterday in what his spokesman has assured was just a routine checkup. Abbas is no stranger to health issues. He smokes, he's overweight, was treated for prostate cancer several years ago, has a stent in his heart to prevent blockages, and he received a heart catheterization last October. But following his release later on Saturday, Abbas's doctor has said, quote, "The president is in very good health," leaving them feeling reassured. Abbas was re-elected to be interim president of the Palestinian Authority in 2005. He is now in the 12th year of his 4-year term. Well, the nightmare of every man and possibly a bunch of women might just be coming true. A huge international study led by the Hebrew University here in Israel has dropped a bombshell, revealing that sperm count among Western men has plummeted by 50% over the last 40 years. That's right, boys. Keep listening. All right, so the bad news first. This research is the first ever of its kind, involving 7,500 studies conducted and analyzed from 1973 all the way until 2011. And unfortunately, the numbers speak for themselves. Scientists found a 52.4% drop in sperm concentration and a 59.3% drop in overall sperm count. Ouch. These staggering numbers account for men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, but shockingly, no significant decline like this was seen among men from South America, Asia, or Africa. Now, the study doesn't directly examine the causes of this decline, but historically, scientists have associated sperm numbers with all kinds of environmental factors like chemical exposure, pesticides, smoking, obesity, and of course, stress. So the good news? Well, maybe this study will be the wake-up call we need to get things flowing again. Now, cybersecurity is easily one of the most important wars being fought right now, but it's also one of the murkiest. An Israeli startup known as NSO Group has been a key player in this war, selling spyware tools to intelligence and military agencies all over the world. And now the company just hit a net worth of $1 billion. NSO Group is the creator of some of the slickest, most cutting-edge hacking technology on the market. Its mission statement is to make the world a safer place by providing authorized governments with sophisticated hacking tech, which governments then use for their own intelligence gathering. It's after that, though, that the ethics start to get a little cloudy. NSO Group made headlines in 2016 when the company's spyware hacked the phone of human rights activist Ahmed Mansour, which most believe was done by the government of the United Arab Emirates. Cybersecurity firm Lookout called the attack on Mansour, quote, "the most sophisticated mobile attack we've seen yet," end quote, announcing the dawn of a new era of hacking. But that's hardly slowed down things for NSO Group. Private equity company Blackstone just bought a 40% share of NSO for $400 million, skyrocketing the tech company's value all the way up to $1 billion. Whether you're religious or not, I'm sure you can agree with me that the beautiful craftsmanship and woodworking that is common in synagogues and other houses of worship is truly worthy of our attention. Well, joining me now in the studio is the CEO of Levi Furniture Industries, which has furnished over 5,500 synagogues worldwide so far. Micha Oberman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. So my first question is, what exactly, specifically, does Levi Furniture Industries do?
Well, Levi was incorporated 55 years ago and started all over the years for the sales and the manufacture of the pews for synagogues. Following that years, as you said, we did more than 5,500 shuls, combining and coordinating with architects and architects all over the world. 10 years ago, we have acquired the artist studio, which the entrepreneur Avram Fried was founded in 30 years ago, which did most of the holy arcs and most of the arts around 10,000 shuls around the world. Wow. And till now, we still accomplishing and building and giving complete projects to all synagogues around the world.
So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about these artists you just said you employ. What kind of artists are you looking for? And you know, how do you use their talents?
A few of our main artists are immigrated to Israel in the 90s, following the main, after the Soviet Union was opened. And most of them are involved with carvings, beaten brass work, and painting, special painting, which are relevant for all the shuls and synagogue for all segments around the world.
So are you doing, wood, painting, stained glass, metal,
Yeah, we involved with all kinds of materials, starting from wood, laser cuts, glass, with all kinds of materials that we can print on, such as we print on glass, we print on wood. Every kind of art is relevant to art in order to give the right solution for the community.
And I mean, the carvings are beautiful. I watched this video earlier before we came in, and it's absolutely incredible work. Now tell me, I understand that you're also doing some outreach programs, something in Canada and another in New York?
We were approached by the Forest Hill Jewish Center, which are in Canada, Toronto. They wanted to restore a complete shul, synagogue, which was burned by the Nazis in 1939 in Poland, in the city of Jeslo. They gave us a black and white photo of the shul, which was opened in 1905. And we did a complete restoration of the Holy Ark.
So did the Canadian congregation give you the money to restore the synagogue in Poland, or make a restorative version of it in Canada?
Yeah, make a version of it in Canada. They wanted to, they have some survivors who still lives in Toronto, and they want to do, in order to remember the past and to promise the future, they wanted to be something as a memory for the Nazis. There was a congregation that want to bring people to be involved in the worship and everything. So one of the to attract them is that they see something which is relevant and bring them to the history of the Jewish.
That's an absolutely beautiful history and an amazing tradition that you've started at the company. And I'm sure that you can't walk into a synagogue in the Northern Hemisphere without seeing some of your company's work. So for that, I'd like to thank you too, because it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful work. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now finally a little hometown recognition. Amazon's Emmy Award-winning series Transparent just released the latest teaser for its 4th season. And it seems the Pfeffermans are about to hit the Holy Land.
I am going to Israel.
I feel like my body's screaming at me. You're in the wrong place.
You feel that?
Whoa!
Excuse us.
Jeffrey Tambor won a Golden Globe and 2 Emmy Awards for his portrayal of Mora Pfefferman, the head of a Jewish-American Pfefferman family who undergoes a very public transformation from male to female. This newest season brings Tambor's Mora to Israel to speak at a conference, but ends up sending the entire family on a spiritual quest instead, and it looks like they're hitting all the highlights on their way there. In the trailer, you can see the Pfeffermans at the Western Wall, camel riding in the desert, being dozed over by ultra-Orthodox men at the Ben Gurion Airport, and even venturing into the West Bank. In fact, the show's creator, Jill Soloway, is promising the season will be even more political than the last 3. Transparent has been a smash hit for both critics and audiences since it premiered in 2014. It's even been cited as one of the most important portrayals of modern Jewish American families on television. A lot of the new season's plot is tightly under wraps, but we only have to wait until September to see the Pfeffermans finally float at the Dead Sea. The next season premieres in September on Amazon Prime. Make sure not to miss a shot. Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Since we were speaking of the Pfefferman family from the award-winning series Transparent, our Hebrew word of the day is clearly shakuf, which means transparent. You can describe a lot of things as shakuf or shkufa for a woman. For example, you could call someone shakuf, meaning you can basically see right through them. Then, of course, there are the situations where you literally want shkifut, or some clarity, like when you're at the beach and you probably prefer maim shkufim, or clear water, right? Make that double for tap water. Just remember, the most important thing to keep clear, transparent, and opened is, of course, your mind. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a low of 76 or 24 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a rise in temperatures to the unseasonably hot high of 89 or 32 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.56 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for watching.